Hey there folks, before we get started, just wanted to mention that we still have a copy of Pierce to Heavens to give away, and we'll be giving that away to a random commenter on this video, so just drop a comment below about this awesome Lancer campaign that we're going to talk about, or the Kickstarter, or any other third-party Lancer stuff you might be interested in, or really anything related to tabletop RPGs. We'll just pick a random comment from below and notify the winner. So let's get into this episode. Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and this week, a special guest. Joining me is Ramon.
Hey, what's up, guys? If this is your first time listening to the Win with Dice podcast, this podcast is all about tabletop RPGs, running them, playing them. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to jamming, so we just like to talk about our games and talk about, playing them, and just so you guys can learn a thing or two, so you feel like you can jump on the other side of the screen, or take up the hobby, or, all that kind of stuff. But also we have a special guest that I interrupted Calvin for this bit.
No worries, we gotta intro people so people know what the show is. But we do have a very awesome guest today, Vex, who is currently writing in Golden Flame.
Hello! It's nice to be back. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, we haven't talked since end of February, so it's been a few months. And you've been working on this campaign, and I know there's going to be a whole bunch of new stuff for it. I took a glance at some of the draft stuff you released since then, and I'm very excited to get into it, and very excited to talk about your Kickstarter, and make sure people go there and support it, because I really want to see this get published, and I really want to see all the cool artwork that comes with it.
Yeah.
But before we get into all of that fun stuff, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Ah, yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week, brought to you by Vex. Thanks, Vex.
Right, so they voluntold me for this one.
Yes. Volun bully, mostly.
But I guess my tip, which I have kind of discovered for myself, even though everyone has told me this many times before, is don't over-prepare. Actually, while I was running my own playtest of In Golden Flame Act 1, I kind of fell victim to this, in that I found it kind of hard to improvise in a campaign that I'd been working on for a year and a half. I felt like I could not make stuff up anymore, because I was very rigidly trying to follow the 260 pages of work that I'd made. And I didn't really give myself, or allow myself, enough room for flexibility in that. Which I don't know, that might have skewed the results of my playtest a little bit. I'm currently running a Blades in the Dark campaign for 3 players that's about to start tomorrow. And I discovered that Blades in the Dark really needs very little preparation. I've written the first 2 kind of like heists that the players will be running, and I did a page of prep for each, and that was all that was needed. And it actually gives me more space to just improvise.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because that game uses like a flashback mechanic, if I recall correctly. Like it's largely players are making checks to set things up for like they would have done before, but are now benefiting them in the moment.
Oh yeah. You can kind of like spend stress, which is your kind of like your health resource for establishing facts about the world, or going, doing flashbacks and saying, oh yeah, like I shared a drink with this guy one time, he'll look the other way just this once, or something like that. And you can spend varying amounts of stress for setting up more and more complicated stuff. I'm excited to try it. I've never run Blades in the Dark before.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't touched that game at all, but I keep looking at it as like, wow, this is like the pinnacle of RPGs, as I'm being told by the internet. But obviously, that sounds really awesome that you can do so much with so little in that game. So I kind of like the idea of sharing the load throughout the table in terms of doing all of the fun narrative stuff, giving the players some more agency and that kind of thing. So it's not all on the GM. Mostly because I'm lazy. And all of my plots are on napkins. So that sounds really appealing to me. So definitely, I think I'm going to have to probably run a game of Blades so I can experience it for myself. But yeah, there you go, folks. There's your weekly GM tip of the week. Brought to you by Vex. Thanks, Vex.
I just like Blades in the Dark because I'm a huge fan of Dishonored.
Oh yes, Dishonored. That is,
Yeah.
it is Dishonored, the game.
There really is a lot of influence of Dishonored there.
I was looking at the world map and I realized that the world map is just kind of like the world map of Dishonored with the bits changed around a little bit, and that's kind of why I love it.
Yeah, I have been also wanting to borrow some of the mechanics from that game, but I do like that it has such a great flavor and feel to it. The little bit of it that I've interacted with, I've seen like little bits of people playing, and I've read a bit on it. And you can really see that they're going for a specific sort of tone with their setting. I think that's pretty cool because it really influences the kind of stories that you tell more than just the mechanics would.
Yeah.
Groovy.
Okay.
All right, well, let's get into chatting about In Golden Flame. First off, Vex, since it's been a while, can you maybe reintroduce yourself to our listeners so they know who you are and what you are up to?
Hi, I'm Vex. I've been running tabletop role-playing games since I was a teenager. They were bad. Then I started running tabletop role-playing games again in 2018, and they were better, because I wasn't a teenager anymore.
Fair enough.
That's not to say that, like, all TTRPGs run by teenagers are bad. It's just mine were. But, you know, it was a learning experience. And then in about, I think it was like January 2021, I got into Lancer. And I had a really good campaign run for me by Jasmine, a friend of mine. And it was so good that I decided to turn it into a published campaign. And that is In Golden Flame. I have currently almost finished Act 1, and we're currently kickstarting for an art budget. That Kickstarter has actually been, the funding goal has been fulfilled, which is, you know, that's the first piece of good news.
Yeah, I want to, congratulate you on that also, because that filled up pretty quickly.
33 hours. I did the math.
Nice.
Like, I had checked on it when you posted the link, and then I came back sometime later and it was already over. And which is very, very good for a Kickstarter, because I know, like, sometimes they don't always work out that way, especially that quickly for, I guess, something this size that doesn't have, like, a super large audience out there, but putting out a campaign for, I mean, like a large audience compared to, like D&D or something like that, but putting out a campaign for a Lancer game and how it just fulfilled so quickly, I think that just shows how excited people are for Jerry. Yeah. I attribute all my success to Jerry. As you should. He needs that he needs that compliment. So yeah, let's just describe In Golden Flame, the story of it, and then maybe we can get into the setting, because I do like a lot of the setting details you've created, and I've been wondering if there's been more stuff that you've added since you published that draft of Chapter 3. So I guess I could just start by reading the elevator pitch from the introduction. Absolutely. You are a mech pilot with a troubled past. You must fight to defend your weird-found family and the crummy backwater system you call home from an apocalypse cult. And the story starts off with a printer breaking, and if you know anything about Lancer lore, this isn't just, oh no, we can't get our paperwork done. This is, oh no, we can't make replacement parts because our Star Trek replicator broke. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
So, you start off having to, metaphorically put out fires that the lack of having your future 3D printer has made. And then you need to go find a replacement part. But even with those deceptively simple goals, you manage to end up in the middle of this sort of absolute gambit pileup between mega corporations, pirate factions, and a literal cult that worships a thing that thinks it's their god and might not even be wrong.
Might not even be wrong. I love that. That's like pretty good. If I believe it, it's true.
We all know what happens with cascading NHPs, right?
Yeah, GG. They're like, wait a minute, I can undo reality. Lol.
I mean, according to Ian, they're perfectly safe, so I don't know what y'all are
perfectly
worried
safe.
about.
Just plug it into your super destructo robot with a bajillion guns. It'll be fine. I think that's like the funniest part about NHPs in terms of like the usage and how mundane use they are, because like, you know, you plug them into mechs, right? Or like they run offices or like, you know, space stations or whatever, right? They're just like used for general purpose stuff, but actually it's like kind of insane. It's like, you know, if you just had like a nuke for your phone or like your toothbrush, it's just like, yeah, it's nuclear power in this thing, it's fine. It's not gonna blow up. There's nothing wrong gonna happen.
In one of the memes I made about the Gorgon frame, the Scylla class NHP. So let me get this straight. Someone faxed the Union Science Bureau a mech, and they actually decided to print it, upon which it immediately developed a malevolent sentience that required, and I quote, defabrication via bombardment of kinetic and energy weapons, and now you want to put a fragment of its consciousness in my mech? Bruh.
No, it's good now. It's only a part of it.
Yeah, for all the mud and lasers, I love how silly the setting can be sometimes.
Yeah, it's like silly and scary, and then back to silly again, being like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. Well, just try it again. Like,
I mean, that's kind of like my inspiration for In Golden Flame, because sometimes, despite itself, I absolutely love the Borderlands series. It has the general style that I like in sort of... It is actually a quite serious story told in a completely unserious setting. Everyone in Borderlands is the most extreme possible version of themselves. Like, you can't just be, like, a slightly eccentric scientist. Patricia Tannis is out there. She is extremely out there. She was in a polycule with chairs at one point, and she's still not gotten over that. And that's just sort of, like, the energy I wanted to bring to In Golden Flame, that, like, nobody in Calliope is just a bit something. They are all of that thing. If you are a sort of reclusive hacker, you're not just a reclusive hacker. You have deleted part of yourself from reality.
You're so deep that you literally partially don't exist on like a physical, realistic plane of existence. I love that. That's pretty good.
Also, like, I'm also thinking of like the Ipswich, the extreme OmniStream streamer who would stream like battle tactics while they're live to their audience, and I think.
Ah, yes, my original character.
I like the amount of stream you use, the extreme.
The extreme stream.
Yeah, the extreme stream whose streamer who streams.
On the OmniStream.
On the OmniStream.
Let's get into Calliope, because I did want to know if, like, how much you may have added or expanded upon in that setting, because I really like the history of it. I really liked also that you measured how long it takes to travel between certain points of it. But let's just get into describing that.
So, I have the whole sort of Welcome to Calliope chapter at the start of the book, and I added a whole section to that called Technology in Calliope, because there were elements of, like, history and the history and culture sections that, like, increasingly became more about technology, and I felt like they didn't really fit. And so I did the same thing, and I made a whole new category for it, and that really opened up, like, a lot more space to talk about things. Like, I've talked about how they generate sort of, you know, like the bare essentials of life, like air, water, and food. this actually led me into kind of like deep, like sort of deep, hard sci-fi stuff about how you would actually do that, like the Sabatier and Bosch reactions, which are kind of useful for producing oxygen from carbon dioxide without using plants, which often you will not have enough of to recycle. Like, for instance, Hell's Gate, the station that the players live on, has sort of somewhere around 2 million people living on it, and like, we have enough plants on Earth to generate oxygen for 8 billion people, right now at least.
GG.
But you probably can't put enough, because like, even though you're like farming stuff for food, you probably can't put enough plants on a space station to generate enough air over a short enough time scale for like 2 million people to breathe every day. I don't know, I haven't done the math for that, but it seems like you'd probably want to have a mechanical backup anyway. Yeah. And so the Bosch reaction, I can't remember exactly what it does, but I think it produces, it takes carbon dioxide and I think elemental hydrogen, and it produces water, which you can then split into hydrogen and oxygen, and you can put the hydrogen back into the reaction, and you can put the oxygen into the air. And I just kind of looked into stuff like that for like how you would process sewage into like potable water on a space station. I actually did this whole thing about like how much physical space you would need to grow food for a single person for a single year. And then I actually... This is deep, hard sci-fi stuff. I was doing like volume calculations for how big the rings on Hell's Gate were and how much space you'd need for that. And I have this, like, I did the EVE Online thing. I made a spreadsheet.
Nice.
I learned how to do like... Microsoft Excel formula stuff to do all of the cylinder calculations I'd need. But yeah, like, sort of... Sorry, this probably sounds boring. I'm probably not describing this very well, but like
I'm very interested, to be honest with you. I love taking science fiction and applying hard science to it, and trying to figure out a way where we can just like meet in the middle and make, you know, the fantastical space station like a little bit more realistic. Because, you know, we can hand wave away a lot of sci-fi stuff like gravity and how are they breathing and stuff like that. Because, you know, want to shoot those laser beams, dog, right? But I still love the fact that you took, like, you just brought in the math, and I appreciate the math.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, I feel like having a basis of hard science for, like, the background details kind of... There's less sort of... Like, someone once was giving me writing tips about buy-in. Like, sort of suspension of disbelief and what people are willing to accept. And it's like... Okay, people are willing to buy in mechs. Even though mechs are not necessarily particularly realistic, they're believable, they're fun, and like people wouldn't be playing Lancer if they didn't want mechs. That's an acceptable buy-in, and things like NHPs and paracausal stuff, that's a little bit more of a buy-in, but people are generally willing to accept that because like. It's a little bit anime, and like we're not going for like absolute hard science realism, but like if you keep adding things that are like less realistic, for instance, like the fact that Lancer doesn't have reliable artificial gravity, so you have to have gravity generated by centrifugal force or by thrust, like in Expanse, like the Expanse. I think that's a good thing. And the fact that like it does have faster than light travel, but it's not easily scalable to ship size, that's a good element, I think, of the Lancer system. Its lore, because it grounds it a little bit against the more fantastical elements. So yeah.
It feels like you can't just like say a wizard did it Right, like that thing where it's like, oh yeah, Wizard did that in like fantasy, where it's like, oh, it's just magic, so and then it's like, why aren't we using magic to solve all these mundane problems? Well, just because like that's not how it works, right? There's still mundane problems that people need to deal with, and on top of like the mech violence, and on top of like the scary god math, like there's just like, I need to eat, right? You're still like breathing human beings, at least trying to play them as breathing human beings and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I mean, again, that's why I'm like, I love it when there's limitations to stuff. You could play around much better with limitations than with just a free open canvas, because what's the point of the Lancers being there if anybody can just show up, right? It needs to be like, they're the only people here because it takes days to get here, and this thing is happening right now, so it's your problem, that kind of deal.
I also found that while writing just sort of the machinery of the world, this is a weird sensation when you're writing, but I kind of like discovered things about Calliope. When I actually sort of sat down to think about things, I was like, for instance, let me give an example. Everything in Calliope runs on deuterium, tritium, and helium-3, the most the most common isotopes used for fusion. And I worked out that at some point I already had established in the timeline that at some point in the system's early history there had been like a catastrophic fuel shortage that almost killed everyone. Mm-hmm. Simply because, their reactors would have gone cold and they would have died out there. And one of the stations, Endymion's Lament, was essentially towed into orbit to act as the counterweight for a space elevator into a gas giant that was harvesting all of these fusion products from the upper atmosphere of the gas giant. And while I was sort of detailing that, I was also struggling with an issue of like Impact Dynamics, who are kind of like the unpleasant corporate influence in the system. They make most of the system's food, and they also have this kind of like massive private army because they used to be a weapons manufacturer. I think I described them once as imagine if Raytheon became Monsanto. And I was like, why aren't they more powerful? They have a huge private army, and they have the entire arsenal of a weapons manufacturer, even if it's like a couple of 100 years out of date. Why aren't they using that? And then I realized the fuel supply has cut them off. Oh. They can't turn their mechs on because they don't have enough fuel. Oh, that's why they're not more powerful. And it's like, that suddenly made sense to me. Like, that was something I have to describe it as like, that's something I discovered about the system. It's just like, these two things are connected. And it's like, it doesn't, like, I know essentially, it's my universe, it's something I invented, but it doesn't feel like a connection I made. It's something I feel like I organically discovered while writing about the system. And that's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, again, like those hard science rules where it's like you gotta fuel the stuff. That's a problem everybody has, right? So you could like apply that throughout the whole, like all the factions, all the people. It's something that, to be fair, it's something that we're all worried about these days. So yeah, I think it again, Lancer. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I can't believe this game exists, but also like, thank God this game exists. It's like the middle ground of all of my anime nonsense, but also real life. And it's like everything is just plausible enough to still be fun, but also like, accurate.
Another major addition I came up with while detailing the technology of Calliope was the Muse, which is kind of like Calliope's local internet. And this was sort of inspired, I'm going to admit it was inspired partially by Homestuck and the endless chat logs in Homestuck.
Homestuck.
But
Wow.
it's a webcomic. If you don't know what Homestuck is, consider yourself blessed. I could
I know
not possibly
Homestuck in
explain it.
passing. Yeah, it's like some deep internet lore that I have like skimmed the surface of in passing from other people talking about it. So it's like, oh, Homestuck.
Yeah,
I know
kind
what that
of
is.
the same. I only knew it was popular after like it had been
After
10,
it was
10 plus years
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, where it was history now. It was like I was a historian. I was like, what is this?
I feel like I missed the whole big thing.
Yeah, or like, what is this 18th century monocle? Like,
But how did that impact the muse as you're describing it?
Well,
yeah,
like
sorry.
so basically, Calliope was first colonized in the middle of this freak blink void. Blink voids are something that happen in the long rim and should be impossible, but it's the long rim, and the long rim just does not respect physics. The long rim has blink voids which interrupt omni communication, the sort of faster than light communication that exists in the Lancer universe. And this one was a freak blink void that lasted for decades. And so they had absolutely no contact with the outside world, and so they just kind of created their own local internet. And even when like OmniNet communication was restored decades later, it still got used. And I figured that this is probably true for like most places in the Lancer universe, that they have their own local internet in addition to the OmniNet. But the Muse was very specifically important because like a whole lot of early era information about the way that Calliope's systems work is kind of buried in like forum posts that are 300 years old or chat logs that haven't been touched in two centuries. There's this story that like I haven't put it in the book, but like it's canon. It exists at least in my head, and I've described it to several people that about 12 or so years after Calliope's first colonists arrived, some dude accidentally, while he was working on something, got shot out of an airlock in a malfunctioning hard suit, and he had like 5 minutes of oxygen left. And he could have spent that time, trying and probably failing to get back to the airlock. But what he actually did is he widebanded all of his server passwords to the entire system so that someone else would be able to access his admin account and that an entire colony wouldn't be locked out of its own computer system and die.
Oh,
and
because he's the guy with the password.
He's the dude with the passwords.
Yeah, if you go deep enough into like the ancient sections of the Muse, you can still find a cached version of that dude's transmission, and some of the passwords still work because people are too superstitious to change them.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I love that because it's so like cyberpunk. Like I don't know explain it other than like I've just been kind of immersing myself in this like cyberpunk because of the anime and the game and stuff like that, but just like the idea that we just build upon like previous technology, and it's like this dead dude's password from like 200 years ago still works in some systems just because people are like, yeah, I'm not gonna change it, that dude died, like we have to keep it the same password. It's just like all these like the idea of like like the idea of like the system itself or the network is kind of like this weird labyrinth of mismatched passages that you could just, if you had like the one key phrase from this back door, you can like get into the system that you're not supposed to. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I've also scattered messages, like chat logs throughout the book of just like exchanges on the Muse that are relevant to the current situation. And the one I put under the Muse itself was a message from someone with the handle Deogram. Got a message yesterday from someone I was arguing with back in the 4850s, and the realization that I am 183 years old hit me like a fucking spool gun. Incidentally, they showed up again to continue the same argument. We live in hell.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if someone just revives some hundreds-year-old forum thread to continue an argument that they weren't even a part of.
It's just like, and another thing. Oh man, yeah, that's like, it feels so real. No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, it feels like, yeah, this is gonna happen. I feel like I'm gonna be like, 70 years old, and like a Twitter thing that I sent and like, today will come back. Be like, oh yeah, by the way, this happened.
Some of the websites I used to hang out on as a teenager are now only accessible via Wayback Machine. Like, I'm only 34 years old, and like, I already have to do archaeology, like digital archaeology, to go to websites I visited as a child. And the internet, as kind of we experience it, has only existed like, what, 40 years? And that's already happened. There's this mod for the game Deus Ex, which I was a part of, called the Nameless mod. And it's one long extended in-joke about forum culture on a website called Planet Deus Ex, which was one of the websites I used to visit when I was 14 years old. And in the mod, you go to essentially like these buried ancient ruins, which are meant to represent Deus Ex Incarnate, the first fan website about Deus Ex. And like, they're buried under a kilometer of like physical forum posts. And I realized while replaying it recently, the same thing has happened to the website that this is meant to be set on. Like, it itself has been buried under these like archaeological strata of new websites. And the World Wide Web has only existed 40 years. Imagine what it will be like after 300. And like, the Omninet in Lancer has existed for like 2,000 years. Can you imagine like looking up a tech support problem on a 2,000-year-old website, finding thanks for the solution, and the thing they're replying to is deleted?
Yeah.
Because the server hosting that answer was on a planet that experienced a nuclear war a millennia ago.
Or even like an earthquake. Like, literally anything could happen in 2,000 years. Like, the sun could have been a little bit too bright, and then everybody died.
Yeah, and Calliope has the Muse, which is 300 years old, and I describe it as being run on, spread across 1,000 servers, co-opted satellites, and jailbroken smart fridges.
Jailbroken smart fridges.
Like, at least one vital component of Calliope is a process running on a smart fridge. It's just like back when I used to work in data centers, there was an old like Mac 2 kind of just like clumsily jammed into a server into a server rack somewhere, and if you ever like even physically touched that Mac 2, it would crash. And half of a major finance website in like somewhere in Manchester would just stop working.
I love it. I love that. It's like slowly becoming like Warhammer 40K Tech Priest. Like, it's just like you have to oil the machine with the special oils. You have to do the chants, or else it won't work.
Absolutely.
These things are so old we can't fix it.
And everyone's forgotten how it worked. Like, there was someone like there's an old quote on bash.org about someone who's lost a server, physically lost. Like, it responds to ping, it works completely. I just can't work out where in my house I put it.
It's like in the wall.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that fridge is one that's like everyone knows where it is, or no one knows which fridge it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the whole technology section of the lore chapter. I just absolutely loved doing that, and it got me into like talking about artificial intelligence and the Calliope Project default CompCon personality profile, which is I'm going to admit it, it's just Yes Man from Fallout New Vegas.
Nice.
He hasn't even, like, his voice modulation, like, its voice modulation database has not even been installed with, like, voice profiles for any emotional affect other than bland positivity. And every single CompCon in Calliope talks like this.
Man. Must be a circus, man. Just...
Like I said, it is a serious story being told in a fundamentally unserious universe.
Yeah. No, that's literally putting a smile on my face. Just like...
Yeah, like, I love the idea of, like, how much it reflects the feel of the physical parts of the setting itself. Like, everything feels like it's put together from parts that work, or at least worked in the moment, and then they just keep getting built off of that, and then you end up with these very fun and ridiculous situations that all still feel like they're part of this world where, you know, we needed to use a fridge to make the internet work.
Yeah, like you know, like there's like a character. I mean, obviously there's like probably several characters or whatever. Just like there's just people who just know about the fridge, but like they'll never tell you about it because they don't want you to mess with the fridge. And then something goes wrong. It's like, hold on, I gotta go to the fridge, and then he just like presses like it needs to be like 2 degrees cooler because that's how it works. Like, it's just like, and then all the warning lights go off. You know what I mean? Something like that. It just leads to like very silly solutions to extremely important problems. But that isn't. It still feels real. Like it could work, but also it's still fun. It's like real and fun at the same time.
There's actually a downtime action you can take on Hell's Gate, which is essentially like the equivalent of urban exploration in the abandoned parts of the station. And one of the most positive outcomes is like you find a key card or like an old forgotten server, and this is the solution to a problem that has been plaguing Hell's Gate for a decade, and like the stability of the station increases. Because it was just like, oh shit, like we walled up like one of the main hydroponics deck servers in an old foundry or something, and nobody knows how to like everyone forgot that it was there, and it's been causing problems for years, and now you finally found it. Or like nobody knew how to get into that door until we found the access card like 2 kilometers deep in a like an abandoned smelting rig.
Nobody can get through this door. Like, just like the mundane to like the extreme where it's like we can't produce enough food to be like, it'd be real convenient if this door opens. Now we don't have to walk all the way down the hallway. Oh man.
I guess talking about downtime activities lets me kind of neatly segue into talking about like the stuff that I've changed and like the new stuff that I wrote since February, and all of like the mechanical stuff that I've done. I have 4 new NPC classes.
Yes, I did want to get into the mechanical stuff because you also added bonds as well. So
oh yeah, 2 of those.
Yeah, let's get into the NPCs and let's get into the bonds because I want to hear what you've done with those, especially the influencer one. I'm very curious about that.
Okay, so like, I wanted to add a couple of bonds that were more flavored towards Calliope, and the influencer was one, and like the influencer is all about like having an audience, having fans, being able to exploit in usually a not actually exploitative way, take advantage of... No. Man, all of these words sound terrible. Leverage the advantages that having a fan base and having an audience bring you. And so it gets you stuff like... one of the bond powers that I quite like is All Eyes on Me. You can take 2 stress to immediately make yourself the center of attention. For a few moments, everyone and everything looks at you and only you. People fail to register the presence of other people or things, and even security footage zooms in on you too tightly to keep track of anything else. And it's just like... it's just like this can represent almost anything. This can represent just like just showing up, being like, yeah, it's me, I'm writing autographs, or it can just be like, I'm gonna call this Karening, making a scene. Just like demanding to see the manager in such a loud voice that everyone looks at you. Like this can the point of Bond powers is that it can represent like a lot of different approaches to doing the same thing. Another one that I like was always an audience. When you're threatened by people who think they can do what they want because they outnumber you or because nobody's watching, you can reveal how you're not as alone as they think. Either they back off now or they choose to. You have some backup after all. Everyone will know who they are and what they did, or that's not the only mistake they made. So this is just like you suddenly produce your Omninet enabled camera drone. It's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, beat me up. Half the galaxy will see it.
I'm live streaming it right now.
I also made the Technician because like there are bonds in there are bonds in the existing bonds, like the builder that I think partially represented this, but I wanted to make a bond very specifically about someone who fixes things, someone who really mends things. And I think it's best represented by job satisfaction, a bond power that just says, when you mend something, anything, when you really, properly, truly fix it, you clear 1 stress. And there's no limit to how many times per session you can do this. So it's just like, you feel better. You literally are better for fixing things.
Nice.
Yeah.
But then I gave it the master power, the ult essentially. Vox ad machina once per session. Touch a non-sentient machine and tell it exactly what you want it to do. If there's even the slightest chance it could do what you ask, it does so at precisely the moment you need it to. Then the GM chooses one of the following. The machine will never work again, ever. The machine exacts a heavy price in return. The machine is no longer totally non-sentient.
Yeah, I would definitely pick that last one.
Oh my god, that's so good. Like, oh, I can see so many things. Like, you know, it could just be like an engine or something, and you like whack the engine. You're like, come on, you piece of shit, get working. And you just like slam it, and it turns on. And it's like, oh, then the music swells. Like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Actually,
like
there's a specific power, sort of bond power in Technician exactly for that. Percussive maintenance once per session. When you whack something inanimate to just make the godforsaken piece of shit work, choose one. It doesn't help at all, but you clear 1 stress, or you take 2 stress and it awkwardly sputters back to life.
Oh my god, that's so good. I love that you could just clear stress by just wailing on a piece of machine.
Like, it doesn't do anything, but you feel better.
I do love the flavor you've put in the description of these things.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one that is just like, in any scene where you're slicked in grease, oil, engine coolant, or you're streaked with soot, or your hair is a little bit burnt, or your overalls are hanging half off, or you're covered in sweat, or any sort of dishevelment from long hard work, you take 1 less stress from all sources. You just make it look good.
I'm so torn because I love both of these. Can't decide on a favorite.
But like, yeah, there's as is usual, there are like 10 regular powers, a veteran power, and a master power for each of the 2 bonds. I wanted to do a third, but like actually working out what the influence's master power was exhausted me, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna make a third one. Not right now.
Yeah, I mean, because you're still gonna do like two more acts of this anyway, so
yeah,
got plenty of time.
I got time. But
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about the NPCs.
Oh yeah,
the NPC classes.
These were kind of like NPCs that I wanted, but Lancer's core NPCs didn't really give me exactly what I wanted. So I was like, I'd tried my hand before at making sort of like, you know, homebrew player mechs, but that never seemed to work out because like when you're making I have immense respect for people who make homebrew player mechs, because you have to make your mech systems work with like every one of the core book systems without being overpowered or useless or duplicating too much, and that's just exhausting. And so I have great respect for other people who do it, but I can't. But when you're designing NPCs, you only have to make their kit work with themselves.
Yeah.
So you can make stuff that's a lot more focused. And I wanted a mech that just kind of is like the heavy weapons guy from Team Fortress 2. Just lays down suppressing fire with a minigun. And the closest I got was like, what if the Scourer had kinetic damage instead of energy damage? But that didn't really inspire me as much as just making a new class. And so I got the Deluge, who has 4 miniguns. They all fire as one unit, but like... And it can literally drown an area in bullets, so that even if you just step into it, you automatically take the reliable damage from the weapon. Because it's just, there's so many bullets.
Yeah.
Some of them have got to hit you. I even gave it like an optional trait called Sheer Volume of Bullets. Attacks with the Deluge's quad assault cannons ignore invisible. Just because it's like...
Just a wall of bullets. Sure, you could be invisible, but I'll just hit everything.
You're still there.
Yeah, he's still there.
It also has an ability, its guns generate heat, and it has an ability that when it hits the danger zone, it does more damage, which kind of like, you know, represents the way that the miniguns just like take a while to get going, but once they're fully spun up, they're deadly.
Mm-hmm.
The Lobber kind of it's a close range area damage specialist. And it throws mining charges, and all of its optional systems are basically stuff that it can bolt onto a mining charge to make it do something different. Like it gets options to like throw it much further, or make the blast bigger, or force a knockdown effect, or turn the damage into burn if it wants to do that. And it can like. These systems are all on recharge, but it can it can combine as many of them as it has. So if it wants to make a range 15 blast 2 charge that does 4 burn damage, it can do that.
Ugh.
I also gave it like one of the most fun traits I've ever made, called Interesting Choice for CQB. It doesn't receive difficulty on mining charges due to being engaged if it includes itself in the blast.
Oh, you can just choose to blow yourself up?
Well, the thing is that it also has resistance to all of the types of damage it deals.
Mm.
So it has resistance to explosive and damage from blast attacks and systems. So it always takes half damage from its own attacks. But it's like... I just had a real fun designing a mech that it's like, yes, do you really want to get close to the mech that throws explosives? Think about this.
It doesn't care if it hits itself. I appreciate the name of the Valhalla trait as well. That really fits.
I changed that because I was not necessarily comfortable with the exact implications of that. It's now called Cook-Off. I did like for those listening at home, when the Lobber is destroyed, it immediately makes mining charge attacks, including itself in the blast. I gave to make this a little bit less dark, I gave the trait the additional text: the pilot may eject as part of this process, and definitely should.
I can picture that being in like the instruction manual.
Yeah.
Oh, the Lobber is fully a mech that like was just kind of improvised from sort of civilian loaders covered in blast plating, throwing mining charges. So like all of this is like bolted together with civilian equipment.
Real slap chop.
Yeah.
Piece of machine, right?
The Slinger is... I wanted a mech that simulated the Raleigh, but it went in a completely different direction. It still has a hand cannon, you know, it still has a revolver, it still has a cool gun. It doesn't do much damage, but it has AP and reliable, so you're always getting at least 1 damage, and it's always bypassing armor. So
yeah, this was one that I thought was really cool when I was reading it.
This is very much focused around chip damage. When it scores critical hits, it marks players, and at the beginning of its turn, it has a protocol that lets it attack every marked player within range. So, it doesn't deal very much damage with one attack, but it can keep stacking them. I also gave it an interesting ability that it's actually been really fun in playtests. It gains accuracy instead of difficulty from being engaged, so actually getting up in this thing's face in an attempt to, like, turn off its ranged attacks is a bad idea. Because it just jams its revolver in your face.
You're like, this is gonna work either way, man. Like, it's just, I'm gonna shoot you.
It's easier to aim from here.
Yeah, it's just like, what did you think? Bang! Like, you fool! I have a gun.
Yeah, I love the slick cowboy vibes of this one. I definitely, from the sessions that I ran, I can definitely think of some players that I would love to put this against, just to see how they would react to it.
I think I'm thinking of those players too. That'd be pretty fun.
Definitely kind of partially inspired by Ultra Kill. I gave that there's an optional trait called Impossible Ricochet, which is its hand cannon attacks natively gain arcing, so that it doesn't care about line of sight anymore. And against characters with Deathmark, they instead gain Seeking, so it doesn't even care about cover. And so what it's doing is it's throwing a mech-sized coin in the air and ricocheting the bullet off of it or something like that.
I love it's just so good. That game has actually given a lot. That game is inspiring, to be honest with you. Just like a weird-ass, just, Doom-like shooter is just like, every time I see like gameplay of it, I'm like, damn, this game is just fucking cool.
The art for the slinger, I'm really pleased with it, because I said to Jake, it needs to be doing something with its other hand. Have it hold hologram playing cards. Yes. And I gave it the famous Dead Man's Hand, which is a reference to the hand that a famous Old West bounty hunter was allegedly was the hand that he was dealt just before he died, aces and eights. And it just looks amazing in the art. Just like this mech holding mech-sized playing cards. I was really pleased with that.
I really want to get... I really want to make some use out of this NPC. And then there's also the parallel, which
the
really
parallel. Cool. Oh yeah, I guess this is the one that has the most, I'd say, overhead in terms of the work that the GM has to do. So I've only used it once as a boss fight in chapter chapter 4. But it can essentially be in 2 places at once because it's split between timelines. It leaves kind of like a semi-real copy of itself that if you deal damage to the real version, it can switch places so that it was always in the timeline that you didn't shoot. And it can also, if you provoke an Overwatch if you're in the area that would provoke an Overwatch next to an Echo, it can suddenly be the Echo and make that Overwatch attack it's very, very much about teleporting around and locking down areas of the battlefield. But players have counterplay in that they can just shoot the Echo.
Yeah. Right. So, would players know which one it is, or it's just in 2 places at once and you have to figure out which one is the real one and which one's the Echo?
Oh no, it's the Echo is very obvious as to what it is.
Right. Okay, so the players they're aware of how this thing, how it sort of functions, and they're just trying to, like all the NPCs, they might be aware of how it functions, and then they're trying to come up with a strategy against that.
Oh yeah. The parallel was interesting because it was the first time in the campaign that my playtest players actually used the scan action. Because they were like, oh, okay, we actually do need to spend a quick action scanning this. What the hell is this thing doing? And it's like, I finally made something that made players use scan.
Yeah, oh man, like, the one time I ever used scan as a player, it was when I was fighting what are those things called when the NHPs go Cascadian, make their own, like, domain? I forget what it's called.
Eidolons.
Eidolons, yes. So yeah, I was fighting an Eidolon, and it was like the least amount of information I could possibly get, and I've never scanned since. I was like, oh, this is weird. Let me use scan, and then it was like, obviously the GM had to give a cryptic riddle of like, what the fuck's going on, and then it was like, oh, okay, never doing that again.
Very productive use of a turn. Thanks.
Yeah, never use scan for like this whole campaign until like the very, very end, and then I'm like, shit, should have used that quick action for something else.
Actually, speaking about Eidolons, let me talk a little bit about Chapter 4.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of like a little bit of a spoiler territory, but you go to a genuinely haunted mine.
Yeah, I did skim through some of Chapter 4, just catching up from what I had missed before. And there was some really creepy and interesting scenes once you arrive in this mine. I don't know how much of it you want to talk about, but we can get into that.
I don't want to spoil things, but like I would say I was heavily inspired by games like Prey, System Shock 2, Dead Space.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I just started playing Dead Space. I just started streaming it, and as I'm reading through this, I'm definitely, I don't want to say too much, but I was definitely feeling some similarities.
Hell, I was here before.
I'm super excited for Callisto Protocol.
Oh yeah, I think they just had like a new trailer or something recently, and it's sort of like a spiritual successor to Dead Space, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I'm excited about it. Anyway, back to the game.
Oh yeah.
But like, yeah, I'd say it's definitely inspired by like sci-fi survival horror, and I don't want to, I don't want to get too pretentious or spoil too much, but I'm setting up something in Chapter 4 that's not going to come up until sort of like later in Act 2, which is, I'm only going to say it like this. The GM asks the players some questions about their characters, and that information might be important later. I kind of also, like, because I can't use the Eidolon rules from Wallflower, because I think, like, Tom's allowed me to reprint some of, like, the NPC stuff from Core Lancer in this book, like the sort of the boss fight blockouts. But I feel like it would be a little bit of a stretch to ask him, hey, can I just reprint the whole section on Eidolons? Like, I wasn't gonna lay that on him.
Right.
So I wanted to still, like, show the full extent and genuine horror of, like, what happens when an NHP is in Deep Cascade, but as more of, like, a narrative exercise than a boss fight. And, like, that's what sort of, like, the second half of Chapter 4 is about. I really don't want to spoil it any more than that, though, so I kind of can't. There's so many things I want to talk about, but I can't really talk about without, like, spoiling plot elements, so I kind of probably have to leave Chapter 4 there, and, like, Chapter 5 is all spoilers.
I mean, how do you even decide, like, what should belong in each, like, what's going to be something that will come up in Act 2 and Act 3, and what's something that you want to pay off more immediately?
I don't have an exact answer for that. It's just kind of like a feeling most of the time. It's like, I suppose I'm like, what would I as a player want answers to right now? and would the answer actually satisfy me if I got it right now? Or would it be more interesting if I got the payoff at a later date? And that's just kind of something I have to feel out, and it's not gonna be correct for every single person.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as a writer, you just have to accept that sometimes if you're setting up narrative payoffs, sometimes they'll come too late for some people and too early for others, and eventually you just have to make a decision. You have to write at least somewhat for yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose. I'm sorry I can't give a more detailed answer. It's not an exact science sometimes.
Oh no, it's cool. I was just wondering if you had any specific method in mind for that, or if it's just what fits with this situation here, and you have an idea for something in Act 2 or 3, but you need to explain or set up something for it to actually work out the way you're envisioning it.
Oh, that's more specifically, yeah. That's something that also lets me kind of talk about how invaluable playtest feedback has been for this whole project, because we were talking about the streamer character Ipswich DeLacy earlier, and without spoiling too much, they are kind of there's a B plot going on with them in Chapter 5, and someone was back a few months ago, they pointed out it's entirely possible that players could have reached Chapter 5 and never even heard of this character. So you need to do something about that. And so I set up just this small vignette at the end of Chapter 2, where Switch just kind of approaches the players when they come back from the icebreaker and says, "Hey, can I interview you for my stream?" And this establishes that Ipswich DeLacy exists and that they have a stream. And even if players are hell no, they still know that Ipswich DeLacy exists and has a stream. So it's not when they get to Chapter 5 and it's Ipswich DeLacy has the plot point, and they're who? And another thing that I gotta hand it to my playtesters was actually Chapter 2 underwent a major revision since we last talked, because initially I'd set 2 fights in really kind of boring warehouse areas, and they were "We're on Spaceless Vegas, dude. Can't you do something more interesting? Set it at a theme park or at a rave." So I moved those two fights to happen at a theme park and a rave. And the theme park mission, you're fighting security who are in mechs that are mascots.
So it doesn't break the illusion.
Yeah, they're mech-sized mascots. The Cataphract is actually a valiant knight, and the Mirage is a devious illusionist.
Oh, nice.
And the Scarers are just straight up dragons. And I just I also added elements to the map, the pyrotechnics that you can set off to create areas of soft cover, and the Ferris wheel you can push over and roll at an enemy.
Yes.
And I just thought I just wanted this. It was a good call. It made the fight funnier and more memorable. And then I had the other fight set at a rave, but I was I don't want to introduce the risk of actual civilian injury to this, because that's not the tone I'm going for. So I was how can I involve the crowd in some way without putting them in actual direct danger? And so I realized, this is the Lancer universe. They're going to have mech fights as a spectacle at the rave. Right. Just in an area that's kind of well gated off from the crowd,
right?
but the crowd can see. And you show up, and only half of the performance team is there, and they assume that you're the other half of the performance team. and start attacking you. But that's their job, that's what they're supposed to do. And no matter how much you try to convince either them or the DJ that, like, no, we're actually fighting here, please leave, please get the crowd to leave, they're in danger, they're like, oh no, dude, you're really getting into it. This is really good acting that you're doing. And so there's this, I developed this clock called Panic/Hype, which is like how much the crowd suspect that, wait, no, this is not part of today's organized entertainment. But like the DJ is absolutely too in the zone to realize that, like, to actually pay attention to you about, like, no, please call an evacuation, please stop spinning music, the crowd is in danger. Like, they absolutely will not listen to you, so you just kind of have to, like, both sides of the fight kind of have to, like, maintain the illusion that, no, this is just a staged fight to stop the crowd from panicking.
I love those extra wrinkles in what could otherwise be like a normal combat situation. Like things you can interact with or other goals that you're trying to achieve. I love doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I kind of wanted most of the fights in Act 1 to have at least some kind of small gimmick. Something that doesn't necessarily get in the way of just, like, mechs fighting each other, but, like, gives the fight a little bit more uniqueness. Like, there's a fight late in Chapter 3 where there's just these, essentially cryogenic fuel tanks, and if you blow them up, everyone next to them is immobilized because their mech is frozen, but they immediately clear all heat.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's just like, oh, there's another one where you're trying to basically hack into the security systems of essentially like a battle royale with mechs, kind of like Apex Legends if it actually had Titans. And the systems are like lowest bidder work, so they're not properly earthed, and if any of them are struck by stray weapons fire, they'll start arcing electricity violently around them. And you can sort of use that to your advantage if you, or enemies can kind of like, if enemies realize that that's what's happening, they'll also use it to their advantage.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I like those. I like battlefield hazards that make each space feel unique as well. Ah, this is really fun. I want to get my hands on this.
And like, this is kind of like, I really liked what Wallflower did with having the boss blockouts, where like each individual like major enemy has their own sort of like section, like page detailing their attacks and everything, just so you have a quick reference there in the book. But they like something that Wallflower did that I did as well is it gives familiar attacks, like stuff that like on familiar NPCs, new names, and flavor text to go along with it. And I really enjoyed that in Wallflower because like it's mostly for the advantage, like it's mostly for like the GM's advantage because they have that there, but yeah, like GMs should enjoy the book as well. Yeah. And it also like it also gave me some opportunities for fun dialogue, like the Chapter 4 final boss. All of their attacks, the flavor text is all like either snippets from chat logs or audio logs, because you've been getting audio, like you've been finding, like you've done the standard like sci-fi horror thing of finding audio logs scattered everywhere. So all of like its essentially voice lines are like repeated dialogue said in a different context.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, those are really cool. It's nice to have something as the GM that just makes the book more interesting to read as well.
It also gave me one of like the pieces of like one of the dialogue exchanges I'm most proud of. What the fuck? How can two physically distinct devices have the same Omni address? They're also both shooting at us, my dude! How is that not your primary concern?
I mean, that's also a tech. That's also a problem, but no, more of a tech problem to deal with later.
I also managed to squeeze in a Kill 6 Billion Demons reference with "Beware the swordsman who carries no blade."
Oh, nice.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. It just sounded cool.
Yeah,
it's cool, Calvin. Like, come on, man.
Fair enough. How
so
was that
cool.
my concern?
He doesn't even need to cut you, Calvin. You're already dead.
So something I did want to ask, especially to someone who's running a Kickstarter right now, how you try to present the book in the Kickstarter, like what elements do you want to put forward, and what maybe have you changed within the campaign itself, knowing that the people you're giving it to, like, this might be their first time playing in or running Lancer, and this might be the first campaign they're getting into?
I don't know as if I've actually changed very much in the campaign for the Kickstarter, but I can answer as like what I wanted to present for the Kickstarter. I definitely wanted to present like the absolutely stellar work of my artists. They are so good. Like, I just want to give a shout out to all of the artists. We've got at ZH Jake Ciano, who does all of the big kind of like scenery. He did the picture of Hell's Gate, the picture of the Icebreaker Borealis. Did the Kickstarter banner as well. The really cool picture of the Dragon's Tooth, the player's ship. We've got more stuff coming from Jake. Also did the preview images for the NPC classes. So real good work from Jake. We've got Roxy at Punk Roxy on Twitter with a 0 instead of an O. Roxy does the character portraits. She is the reason that Jerry's tie is the floor from a bowling alley, which is the best thing ever. She's done so many like really expressive this word gets overused, but like whimsical portraits. Like these characters look a little bit goofy in a good way. Just like kind of like very much the sort of Borderlands aesthetic I was going for. This is a little bit cartoonish, and I'm really proud of that. Like she's done really good work on that. We have Robin. If you've seen the picture of Feather, the cascading NHP that Robin did, yeah. That's and like we've got one coming for the boss of Chapter 4, and we've got like incidental work from other artists. Sasha is doing a picture of one of the Chapter 1 sort of, sort of like the important character for a particular fight, Signal, who pilots a Mirage that is about 80% server equipment by volume. And I've got like Barracuda did that really like stunning portrait of Andros Capella in Chapter 1. So we've got like we've got a lot of artistic talent, and I really wanted to get them out there because this Kickstarter is for their art. I'm not making money off of this, except to cover money already given to them before the Kickstarter started. So like this is all for their art.
Right.
And I really wanted to put that front and center, but I also wanted to put like example pages that kind of like got across the tone of the adventure, like the sort of like I'd suppose like humorous, light-hearted tone that I wanted to set for this adventure. I really wanted like I just wanted a few that kind of like show off my writing, because like there's some writing in this book that I'm really proud of, and I wanted to show that off. But I wanted to make sure that people had like, I don't know, is vertical slice the correct word?
Yeah, that's what you would use in game development when you get to a certain milestone or something like that. That would apply here as well.
I wanted to give a vertical slice. So like I didn't want to give like, I don't want to give too much of the same section of the book away in one go. But like I definitely wanted people to like see exactly like, you know, like what's going on in different sections of the book, and like, yeah, I just wanted people to get a good idea of the product that they're paying into.
Definitely.
I hope that kind of answers the question. I'm not sure, like...
Oh, no, I was just curious, like, what... Like, I mean, most of what I was curious about there was just, you know, what goes into making a Kickstarter, what goes into translating what you've written already, these drafts, and to put them in front of people in a way that they are interested in this project and want to invest in it and pledge money for it and, you know, get a copy of it when it's released. I just wonder what your steps are.
I had a lot of advice from the people who ran Liminal, like who made Field Guide to Liminal Space.
Yeah.
Because they ran a very successful Kickstarter, and so I just kind of like, I asked them for advice, sort of about like the time I should launch it, the dates I should be running it on. They said run it for 30 days and probably, you know, like get it out the door sometime in late October. So that it'll be running somewhere around Black Friday, like so that it'll be ending somewhere around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I'm not American, so I'm not entirely sure when that happens, but like we seem to have had a fairly successful Kickstarter like campaign so far. You know, it's early days yet, but we've got funded, and that's honestly like I wouldn't say that I knew exactly what I was doing. I suppose I put the parts of the book that I really liked out there, and I'm sorry if this is kind of like a vague answer. It's just
no, not at all. I'm sure there's no like 100% super accurate formula to always work, but like good advice and, you know, making sure that you put out the things that you like the most for people to see. I'm super curious about that starting in late October thing. I was wondering how Black Friday would apply here. I guess if people are just looking to make more purchases around that time, and then like the end of the Kickstarter just shows up around that time, maybe is that what the point of the advice you got there was? Or I'm just super curious about this particular thing.
I also googled like when in the day I should start the like launch the thing, and like what day of the week I should do it on, and like this is, I guess, like slightly speculative, but like and there might be some sort of selection bias, but like apparently tabletop RPG Kickstarters are most successful if you start on a Tuesday for some reason. Although, like, again, that might be selection bias. But like, I just looked this up on Google, and that's why I started on a Tuesday. And they just general advice websites for like how to run a successful Kickstarter kind of said like launch around midday EST. So the like basically the advice for like Tuesday seemed to be so that none of the apparently the first 72 hours are the most important, and this is stuff I'm just repeating because other people told me, so like take it with a grain of salt. Like the first 72 hours are the most important in a Kickstarter, and apparently you don't want them to fall on a weekend. I wasn't entirely sure about the logic behind that, but it seems to have worked. And you also want to launch it around midday EST. I'm not entirely sure of the logic behind that either, but it seems to have worked. So I have to say, honestly, I just did what a bunch of websites and other people who ran successful Kickstarters told me, and it seemed to work out.
I guess they're right.
Yeah, there must be something there.
But like I said, it might be selection bias. It's like so many Kickstarters are doing these exact things that like well, yeah, of course you're going to get more successful Kickstarters doing these things because more Kickstarters are doing these things. But, like, there must be something to it. I don't know. It's just what I did, and it seems to have worked, so... But, like, I guess, like... I guess it's kind of illustrative that you don't need to know exactly what you're doing to be successful. Like, you don't need to... You don't need to, like, have an absolutely firm idea of everything. Just, like, go with the parts of your work that you're the most proud of and put those out there. And I think it does help that, like, I have been talking about this project for a long time and a lot of people know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was also something as well, because you've definitely got... a lot of people who might be following you on like Twitter and I think also Tumblr as well, who, you know, would have seen you building this project along the way.
Yeah. I know the amount of times that I actually reference Jerry on things that have nothing to do with Lancer is quite astonishing, to say the least. That guy has stuck in my brain for rent-free for a very long time.
I'm just so pleased that, honestly, that we nailed Jerry. Like, everything else in this project could have been kind of mediocre. But the fact that we nailed Jerry, I would still have been pleased. But, like, you know, like, we've got a hell of a good project here, though. So, you know, but, like, getting Jerry right... So, like... You know, I don't want to reference Marvel projects too much, but like there was the original Avengers, and there's that you know, infinitely famous like pan around shot of like the Avengers assembling, and the director said of that shot that it's like, we have to get this right, or the whole movie doesn't work. And it's like, I don't think you should structure a movie around one shot going perfectly. I gotta hand it to them. They did get that shot perfect, and like they were correct. The movie would not have worked without it.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I feel like getting Jerry right was kind of important, because it's like, I think Jerry does really help in setting the tone of the campaign. Like, he's kind of this man who is endlessly trying to do his best, even though it costs him his peace of mind. And he lives in a universe where, like, you have to laugh or you'll cry, but he's all out of laughter.
It's like so relatable.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think he's put in this position of, I guess, authority in a way. He does give you, like, your tasks to do, but he doesn't feel like, I mean, while he's technically an authority figure, in a way it's like you understand the stress that he's under and that he's trying his best. He doesn't feel like he's, I mean, obviously there's people even in the story who like abuse their position, but that doesn't feel like that's what Jerry's doing. He's just doing the best he can for the situation that he didn't expect to find himself in, and I think that's part of what makes him a great character.
I mean, I explicitly made it like clear in the lore that there are a group of people on Hell's Gate who think Jerry is overstepping his bounds as an acting station director by not calling an election. The reason Jerry has not called an election is because he has no opposition candidates.
Exactly.
No one would run against him, and he would, and his strict rationale behind this is, I would have even less credibility as a leader if I ran unopposed in an election than if I'm just in it as an acting role.
Yeah.
Someone has to step up and volunteer for this job that I hate before I will hold an election. I can't leave this post unmanned. And it's like, why won't Jerry retire? Obviously, he craves power. And it's like, no, the man would like nothing better than to retire. But apparently, if he doesn't do this job, nobody will.
No one. Yes.
It's so good. It's like so good because, like it's just like Jerry is the real hero. Like, like there's the players, and then but then there's Jerry, who's low key the hero of the whole story.
There's I'm opening something. I'm doing something with Act 2. I'm actually opening it with this is something I picked up from the World of Darkness books, that they open with a short story set in the universe. I'm opening Act 2 with a story that kind of like Kilena Morton is detailed in Act 1, but doesn't really come up very much. They are the sort of the Union liaison with Calliope, kind of like the highest ranking Union official in Calliope, not that that really means anything. And this story kind of introduces them, and it also involves Jerry, and it also involves Jerry speaking his mind to Central Committee. And I'm really excited for people to see that.
Yes.
Because it's like Jerry finally calls some motherfuckers out.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I wanna read it.
Yeah, like I'm really looking forward to Act 2 as well. So, yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, we're
Awesome.
This is much like the last time we had you on. We've been recording for almost 90 minutes at this point, and it's gonna take me a while to edit this, but I had a blast with this conversation. Is there anything else you want to say before we head off? We are gonna have links to the Kickstarter below for people to check out, so definitely make sure to go do that.
I guess if any of the people who backed me on Kickstarter are listening, thank you. Seriously, it means a lot to me that people care this much about my work. So, seriously, thank you. It really means something to me.
Yeah, I think you wrote a really incredible campaign and space and setting and characters here, so I think a lot of that is reflected in the response to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
So if you're listening to this and you haven't gone to the Kickstarter page yet, you've still got plenty of time. Definitely go check it out. Definitely go drop some support there for the Kickstarter. It'll be like the first link we have below, as well as to some other social media stuff. And also we are going to link all the artists, because on the Kickstarter page all their Twitter stuff is linked as well, so I do want to include those in the description of this video because I want to show off their cool work.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be it for this episode. Before we sign off, I forgot to mention up top, I'll record an extra thing for this. We do have one more copy of Pierce the Heavens to give away. And we'll just choose a random commenter from this specific video. Last time we chose it from like the last couple of videos, but it'll be from this specific episode. We'll pick a comment and then we will give away that last copy. As well, I want to make sure we give shoutouts to other people, including Shaka, well, not even recently at this point because time is weird. But the Plymouth Rock Lancer Actual Play series has been started like a month ago, maybe? I don't want to look at a calendar. But there's links down below to the trailer and the first episode, as well as all the other Lancer people we've talked to. Definitely go check out all their other projects as well. And of course, the Win with Dice channel, the Untold Stories Project channel.
Wow, we're really shouting us out on our own show. It's crazy.
It's been a long weekend. The Untold Stories Project channel, where I am at on Mondays and Tuesdays in their various superhero games. The Starhaven game set in space, our cool space home currently being invaded, and the Gemstars game, which is magical girls in a fantasy land. And that game is a whole lot of fun. I just finally got to use a catchphrase last week, which is interesting. And that's about it for us. Oh, one last thing. Also on the channel, gaming streams. We mentioned Dead Space earlier. That is streaming on Sundays. There's Batman on Thursday, Skyrim on Friday. Whole lot of fun stuff. And that is actually it for the episode. Vex, thanks again for coming and hanging out with us.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a blast to have you on.
I'm gonna be very excited to have you back on when you start Act 2. Or maybe at least when the Kickstarter is over, and then I finally get to read all of this. And hopefully run it one day.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm excited to run it, but also nervous because I want to make sure I get Jerry right. I don't know what voice I would give him, but I want to give him the right one.
I think you need a tie. That's what you would do. You need to just suit up. That's what you would do. Just get into character.
Suit up while GMing. That just might work. Alright, well, for everybody listening, for all our GMs and players out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.